Have you ever stopped to think about the power of biblical prophecies? How the fall of powerful cities, the exile of the people of Israel, the triumphant return of Christ, and even the creation of a new heaven and a new earth were foretold thousands of years ago. Each prophecy is an essential piece for understanding the divine plan. And believe me, what is to come is even more impressive. Stay with me until the end to understand what the future holds for us and how these predictions can transform the way we see the world and our own lives. Shall we begin? The Great Flood, Genesis 6:13-17. The Bible presents one of its most impressive and dramatic prophecies early in its narrative, the Great Flood. In Genesis, God reveals to Noah that human wickedness had spread throughout the earth, and as judgment, he would send a great flood to destroy all life, sparing only Noah, his family, and the animals he was instructed to gather to preserve the species. This warning of a catastrophic disaster where waters covered the entire earth is one of the most striking prophecies due to its magnitude and apocalyptic nature. When discussing the flood, it is important to understand the gravity of the situation described. God observes that all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth, Genesis 6:12, and decides to act to reverse the evil that had overtaken the world. The command for Noah to build the ark is given as a way to rescue life, preserving a seed for the renewal of humanity. The Fall of Tyre, Ezekiel 26:3-14. Ezekiel's prophecy against Tyre is one of the most detailed and impressive regarding the destruction of a city. Tyre, one of the most prosperous and powerful Phoenician cities, became the target of divine judgment due to its pride and its relationship with Israel's enemies. The prophet Ezekiel, in announcing Tyre's fall, described in great detail how the city would be besieged and destroyed by foreign forces, especially by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. The fulfillment of this prophecy came after years of resistance. Tyre initially withstood Nebuchadnezzar's siege, which lasted 13 years. However, the city, which had a fortress on an island, managed to escape for a time. Yet, in an unexpected turn of events, Alexander the Great, over 200 years later, finally destroyed Tyre in a remarkable way, even using the rubble of the original city to build a causeway to the island, thus fulfilling Ezekiel's prophecy that the city would be razed and become a place to spread nets, Ezekiel 26:14. The detail of the prophecy about Tyre, predicting its complete and permanent destruction, is striking, as it was fulfilled not only through Nebuchadnezzar's attack but also through the final destruction by Alexander. The fact that Tyre was never fully rebuilt, as Ezekiel foretold, makes this prophecy a clear example of how the words of a biblical prophet were fulfilled with historical precision, reinforcing the belief that divine judgment upon nations is inevitable. The Babylonian Exile, Jeremiah 25:11-12. Jeremiah's prophecy about the Babylonian exile is one of the most direct and impactful regarding the fate of Israel. In Jeremiah 25:11-12, the prophet announces that the Jews would be taken captive to Babylon, where they would remain for 70 years. This exile, which came to pass after the fall of Jerusalem in 586 BC, was a landmark event in the history of the people of Israel. The destruction of the temple and the deportation of much of the population marked the end of an era for the Jews, who found themselves under the dominion of a great foreign power. The fulfillment of this prophecy can be traced in the historical account of the siege of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple by Nebuchadnezzar II. During this period, many Jews were forced to live in Babylon, far from their promised land, and this exile lasted until the fall of Babylon to the Persian Empire. Jeremiah's prophecy not only foretold the exile, but also the exact time the Jews would spend under Babylonian rule, preparing them for their eventual return to their land. This prophecy holds profound spiritual significance, as although it was a punishment, it also became a period of reflection and renewal for the Jews. During the exile, many of the religious practices and cultural identity of the people of Israel were preserved, And the return to Jerusalem, as foretold by Jeremiah, represented a spiritual and physical rebirth for the people. The coming of the Messiah, Isaiah 53. One of the most extraordinary and significant prophecies in the Bible is found in Isaiah 53, where the prophet describes the figure of a suffering servant, someone who would bear the transgressions of others and carry the sins of humanity. This prophecy, often seen as a foretelling of the coming of the Messiah, has become a cornerstone of Christian faith. As many believe, it is fulfilled in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Isaiah 53 speaks of a servant who is rejected, stripped of his glory, and humiliated to fulfill the divine will. He was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Isaiah 53 verse 5. For Christians, this suffering servant aligns with the description of Jesus Christ, who endured suffering and death on the cross to redeem humanity. The fulfillment of this prophecy in Jesus is seen by many as the key to understanding the messianic purpose in Scripture. For Jews, this passage remains a point of debate, with some interpretations suggesting that the servant represents the people of Israel or a future leader. However, the Christian perspective clearly sees Isaiah 53 as a foretelling of Christ's sacrifice. This prophecy is remarkable not only for the clarity with which it describes the Messiah's suffering, but also for the precision with which it aligns with the events of Jesus' life, from his rejection and suffering to his death on the cross, fulfilling God's plan for humanity's salvation in a profound and definitive way. The fall of Jerusalem and the temple, Luke 21:6, Matthew 24:2. The destruction of Jerusalem and the temple is one of the most striking prophecies in the New Testament and is regarded by many as one of the greatest prophetic fulfillments. In Luke 21:6, Jesus prophesies, "The days will come when not one stone will be left on another, every one will be thrown down." Similarly, in Matthew 24:2, he also states that the temple will be destroyed so completely that not one stone will remain on another. This apocalyptic description by Jesus came to pass in 70 AD, when the Roman army, under the command of Titus, destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, bringing an end to the splendor of the holy city. This event was devastating for the Jews, not only because of the loss of the temple, but also due to the psychological and spiritual impact it brought. The temple in Jerusalem represented the heart of worship to God, the place where sacrifices were offered, and where the divine presence was most intensely felt. Its destruction was a profound blow to the religious and cultural identity of the Jews. Many saw this destruction as the fulfillment of a prophecy announced by Jesus and a confirmation of his divine authority. The restoration of Israel, Ezekiel 37:21-22, Jeremiah 33. The restoration of Israel is one of the most fascinating and impactful prophecies in the Bible, especially when we observe its fulfillment throughout history. In Ezekiel 37:21-22, the prophet describes a vision of God gathering the people of Israel from all nations to restore them to their promised land. God promises that they will be one nation in the land, and that the division between the tribes of Israel will be removed. This event is often interpreted as a foreshadowing of the return of the Jewish people to their land after centuries of dispersion. The fulfillment of this prophecy began to unfold in the 20th century, when after World War II the nation of Israel was reestablished in 1948, an event many view as the realization of Ezekiel's words. The restoration is not only physical but also spiritual, representing Israel's return to their God and the fulfillment of the promises made to the patriarchs. Jeremiah 33 also speaks of Israel's restoration, stating that the Lord will bring his people back from captivity, and that they will return to the land I gave to their ancestors. This is seen as a promise of both political and spiritual renewal. For many Jews, this restoration reaffirms God's faithfulness, and for Christians it is a part of the divine plan for the fulfillment of messianic prophecies. The restoration of Israel is therefore seen as a milestone in biblical history, pointing to both the physical return of the people to their land and the promise of a spiritual renewal and the fulfillment of God's plan for the ultimate redemption of humanity. Daniel's prophecy about the kingdoms, Daniel 2:31-45. One of the most detailed and remarkable prophecies in the Bible is found in the book of Daniel, where the prophet receives a vision about the kingdoms that would succeed the Babylonian Empire. In Daniel 2, King Nebuchadnezzar dreams of a great statue made of different materials, a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, and feet made of iron mixed with clay. Daniel, with God's help, interprets the dream, revealing that the statue represented a succession of world empires, each following the previous one. The head of gold represented the Babylonian Empire. The chest and arms of silver symbolized the Medo-Persian Empire. The belly of bronze stood for the Greek Empire, and the legs of iron represented the Roman Empire. The feet, mixed with iron and clay, indicated a blend of kingdoms that would be fragile, yet still exert influence over the world. Daniel's prophecy concludes with the vision of a stone, cut without human hands, that smashes the statue and grows to fill the whole earth, representing God's eternal kingdom. This prophecy is remarkable not only for its global vision of successive empires, but also for the historical accuracy with which it unfolded over the centuries. The rise and fall of the Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Greek, and Roman empires occurred exactly as Daniel foretold, demonstrating God's power to reveal future events. The stone representing God's kingdom is seen by Christians as the arrival of Jesus Christ and the establishment of his eternal reign, which, unlike human empires, will never pass away. The return of Christ, Matthew 24:30-31, Revelation 19:11-16. One of the most anticipated prophecies in the Bible is the return of Jesus Christ, an event marking the end of times and the establishment of God's kingdom. In Matthew 24:30-31, Jesus describes his return in great glory, saying that they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, accompanied by angels to gather the elect. This vision portrays a triumphant return in which Christ comes to judge the nations and restore all things. The book of Revelation also provides a striking vision of Christ's return. In Revelation 19:11-16, he is described riding a white horse with garments dipped in blood and a name written that no one knows except himself. He is called King of Kings and Lord of Lords, coming to execute justice and defeat God's enemies. This passage in Revelation symbolizes the final victory over evil and the establishment of the eternal divine government. The prophecy of Christ's return has been a central theme for Christians throughout the centuries, bringing hope and comfort. While the exact timing and manner of this return remain unknown, the promise of his coming assures the faithful that suffering and injustice in the world will come to an end. For many, it is the promise of a new era of peace where Christ will reign over a new heaven and a new earth, where there will be no more pain, suffering, or death. The certainty that Christ will return to establish his eternal kingdom offers a transformative vision of hope, revealing that despite current difficulties, the final triumph belongs to God. The end of the world and the final judgment, Matthew 25:31-46, Revelation 20:21-15. The Bible describes the end of the world and the final judgment as inevitable events marking the culmination of God's plan for humanity. In Matthew 25:31-46, Jesus speaks about the separation of the righteous and the wicked at the time of judgment. He describes how, upon returning in glory, he will sit on his throne and all nations will be gathered before him. The righteous, represented as sheep, will be invited to inherit the kingdom prepared for them, while the wicked, represented as goats, will be destined for eternal punishment. This final judgment will be based on each person's actions, especially how they treated those in need. In Revelation 20:11-15, John presents an even more dramatic vision of the final judgment. He sees a great white throne, and before it, the dead, great and small, being judged according to their deeds. Those whose names are not found in the book of life are cast into the lake of fire, while the righteous are rewarded with eternal life. This moment symbolizes the end of evil's reign, the closure of human history, and the inauguration of a new era where God will be all in all. The prophecy about the end of the world and the final judgment reveals a central principle of the Bible. God's judgment is just and based on humanity's response to His grace and truth. For many, it serves as a call to live according to divine values, mercy, justice, and truth. Furthermore, it is a source of hope for the faithful who await the promise of a new heaven and a new earth, where God's presence will be eternal and uninterrupted. Closing now, the big question is, how will you respond to these prophecies? What do they mean for your life? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and if this video made you reflect, subscribe.